Dawn of the Dead, 2004. Personally, one of my favorite movies of all times, especially within the realm of the zombie survival horror era. Many good things about it, and in the relation to what we're talking about, many things that could have been done better as far as the characters and what they should have done. Now, there's a lot going on in the movie, a lot of moving parts going around. Starts off with pretty much a fast-paced, high-impact. These zombies are out there, they're tearing through people, and at that time it was still a new twist that they could run. So it was not the traditional slow, shuffling, ambling sort of zombie that moans and groans and takes 10-15 minutes to move along. No, these were the kind that when you caught their attention, they could be 10 yards away, 100 yards away, it doesn't matter. They're coming at you like a full-speed Olympic sprinter, and unless you're twice as fast as they are, you're not getting away right away, because they have the advantage that they don't actually need to breathe, they don't get out of breath, they don't suffer from lactic acid and muscle cramps, and they feel no pain in regards to they need to stop and take a breath. So everything that they do is focused upon getting after you and tearing you apart. Everything that you as a character would have to do is try not to get eaten. Now, with that being said, multiple characters converge through the beginning part of the film, and they end up at the mall. Now, my guess is they're at the mall roughly about the time that mall employees might start showing up had the world not gone to total chaos, hell in a handbasket. So they get there, they make their way inside, there's a couple of scuffles, things like that. They eventually catch up with mall security, who is still on site. They secure the mall as best they can. Now, that's right off the top where my criticism starts. Pick any type of mall, anywhere. They all have some of the basic same setups. You have the mall entrances, 2, 3, 4 of them, that bring you into common areas, concourses, plazas, mezzanines within the mall itself. And then you have the anchor stores, the big box stores usually around the outside, that have their own entrances into the store from the outside and then connect to the mall. All these smaller sub-stores, they're usually the one in, one out. The entrance is the exit, and you can only gain access to it from within inside the mall. Now, from the point that all of these survivors get together and they start trying to figure out exactly what's going on, they run through the quick assessment list of who are you, what do you do, basically trying to find out what people can contribute within the group, who is someone who's actually important and necessary, and who's someone that at the minimum, they're going to be watching a door or they're going to be running to get supplies. So it progresses through, things kind of settle down within their environment, and they basically have the run of the mall. Now, where I feel that they should have done better, they already had the mall security guys there. The security office and the rest of the mall was still up and running, still had power at that point in time. It would have been preferable in a situation like that, take the security office, the cameras, the radios, make that your command center. From that point, you designate certain areas and you block off the doors to make sure they're all secured and no one else can get in. Any stores that are closed, like the big box ones, leave them closed. If their doors are still shut down connecting to the mall, just leave it alone. Only go to the specific stores where there are necessary supplies. So you look at the food courts, you'd go to each of those restaurants, each of those little eateries. They're going to have supplies, they're going to have food. You start working your way through either consolidating the supplies or looking at the stuff that's there, stored up, that's non-perishable, gathering that, looking at what you can take as far as perishable food and use that right away. Collect as much water as you can. If there are other stores that have specialty things, there was a scene inside a sporting goods store where they had to end up fighting off one of the zombies. Great, you fought it, you killed it, it's done. But the sporting goods store, whether or not, if it did, it would have been preferable, gather weapons. It could be anything from hunting knives, bows and arrows, perhaps firearms, even if it's just baseball bats or maybe a hatchet. Take stuff from there to start building up your defenses. Lock up the store. Moving into the individual characters, everyone's wearing what they had on. Pretty much that's it. So everyone's walking around, sweat and blood stained, soaked clothing, dirt and grimy and greasy. I understand that. But again, find some clothes, offers you better protection. Get some gloves. Get better footwear. If you're in flip-flops or sandals, not a thing to have. You want to be able to make sure that your fingers and toes stay protected as much as possible. So there's a lot of stuff that in that scenario, I would have looked at setting up the group to start gathering, providing security, monitoring everything, and having an isolated area where everyone basically sleeps with areas of control through those hallways and corridors. Usually restrooms in a lot of the malls tend to be off the side to a long corridor that runs by or behind several stores. And in some cases, it goes to the back rooms, as it were, for the mall, where there might be the security booth itself. So again, looking at trying to keep people as close together so you can basically get a head count anytime you need to. And then if there is trouble, it's a lot easier to bring people in. And then start looking at where you can go within the mall, because there was mall parking, there was the maintenance area, and they spent a lot of time on the roof, one, looking at the massive zombies starting to gather around. Initially it was, a couple dozen spread throughout all the parking lot, and then it got more and more and more. My feeling is the one thing that caused it is they were doing target practice, so they're firing their gun that they had, their rifle, shooting at the walkers, the zombies. Great. You get some target practice, so this way everyone knows how to shoot, but now you've attracted, every shot that you fire brings you another 10 or so zombies. One of the characters made contact with a gun store owner on the far end of the parking lot, and they were on the rooftop playing chess and everything. It wasn't until in the movie, almost a week or two later, that they started to communicate the idea of making a getaway, making an escape, which in no small part was not directly their character's fault, because one of the characters had a boat at the marina and just failed to mention that, early on in the beginning when they're trying to figure out how to get out of here. It was kind of like, oh yeah, I got a boat and the marina, gassed up, ready to go. So that was one of those things. If people have ways to get out, it's preferable that you start bringing that up right away. And yeah, granted, if you're in a group with a bunch of strangers that you don't know, and you have a safe and secure way to get yourself out, or at least you have a safer place to be, you may not be too keen upon sharing that information, especially if it's something that's limited in size, limited in supplies, basically something just for you. Granted, no problem. But unless you have a way to magically transport yourself out of the bad situation that you're in to get to that magical wonderland, you're going to need the other people to kind of help out and move in that direction. So you got to, do that coin toss and decide heads or tails, what do you want to do? Once they've decided to make their great escape, it now comes down to how they're going to do it. Now, I will give them, A+ props on this. They pulled a A-Team MacGyver crossover. They took two of the shuttle bus vans for the mall and started jerry-rigging up the snow plows and put on steel grating plates over the windows. They made, gun port slots and everything else that they needed, so that way they could basically barrel through the growing crowd of zombies. And they had the basic route planned out of where they were going to go, which is still a difficult thing because yes, the streets are still there, but you have to take into account the number of motor vehicles that got into accidents, collisions, that people basically left their vehicle where it was to try to get out and escape on foot. That road, that street, that side alley, everything else might be blocked. And unless you're actually in an M1 Abrams that you can roll over things, or you've got a 2.5-ton plow blade hooked up to a 5-ton dump truck that you can just push right through everything, you may run into obstacles. But to move the plot along, that wasn't a real situation. So when they decided to finally make their way out, of course, and I'm not glossing over it, but they were dropping a lot of bodies one by one by one. Every other scene, someone got bit, and then someone ended up having to get taken care of. That's just the way that goes. That's the reality of it. It's like the old saying that you can't outrun a bear, but you can't outrun the person that's with you. It's just one of those things. It's either you or them, and that's how things sort of progress along, intentionally or otherwise. So, as I said before, a thing to think about is your supplies, your security. First thing is first is secure your area. Know how you got in, and can you control other people getting in, and are there other entrances there? How are you going to get out? You need more than just one way. You need 2, 3, 4 if possible. Isolate the area that you're going to basically stay in, so this way you have one secured zone and you control the areas that you need to get to other places, and then you have those set up to be secure, so you're never caught out in the open. I mean, that would be a terrifying thing. You're just walking around the mall and you hear something, you start moving through and you're coming to one of those nice little water fountain courtyards, and it's so nice, and the skylight up above, and then you just start seeing 4, 5, 10, 20, 30 heads popping up, and they're all zombies, and they start coming over the banister, coming down the escalator, down the steps, and you're getting swarmed. You're going to be changing your underwear if you live to do that. So having an idea of where you need to go in the event that something like that happens, having a control point that you can get to. And although in many different types of horror movies, You know, the zombies tend to be not as coordinated, sometimes a little more than others on a general scale. It seems to be a common thing, though, that stairs as a whole going up still kind of slow them down. Doesn't stop them completely, but it still slows them down. It's easy to go downstairs, and anyone who's walked downstairs and fallen knows going down is the easiest thing. Going up, not so much. So looking at a high ground standpoint, a stairwell or a corridor that you can close off and blockade, so this way you fall back to there, makes it a little more difficult for them, especially if you can set up things like office chairs, sofas, you know, filing cabinets, anything that you can find in different sections, because you can make a little labyrinth navigation course that a rational human being can look at and clearly see, go to the right, go to the left, step over this, move up this side, move to this side, duck under that. But a rampaging sort of semi-mindless zombie that's just focused on chasing after you isn't really seeing a pattern or a pathway. They're just seeing you and going in your direction. So that can tend to slow the first 2-3 down, which then backs up the rest like a traffic jam on the highway. You know, one zombie hits the brakes and falls, the next one falls over that, and they start falling and piling up until that pile becomes a little ramp, and then the next 20-30 just run right over the top of them, which that's another thing that you have to deal with later on. Once they got out and they were on the streets, they're making their way through. The plan was going well, but, you know, within the movie, you know that if it's going well, something's going to go wrong. And, you know, sure as shit, things tend to go wrong. They ended up losing one vehicle, losing the next one, crashing, having to make it out on foot. Got all the way to the marina. No spoiler alert because it's 2004. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. But not everyone makes it onto the boat, and the few that get off, they're drifting off into wherever they're trying to get to. I think they were trying to find some like island that was in the middle of a lake or something somewhere. But the point being, gathering the supplies that you have, if you're going to make a run for it, first and foremost, you got to figure out who's capable, because it really comes down to, as compassionate as you may want to be, and as much of a group as you may be, like we've made it this far, not everyone's going to make it. And some people, no matter what, have only made it as far as they have because other people have carried them or made the path easier for them. So you have to start thinking about your critical supplies. Who don't you want carrying something that's important, because they're most likely going to be the one that gets left behind, gets bitten, gets attacked, gets injured. And now not only are you one person down, but you're one person down and they've got the important supplies. And in reference to that, one of the key people had the keys for the boat, the guy who owned it, of course, in his pocket, and of course he got bit and he got turned. So now it was a matter of they needed to get the keys off of his now zombified body so they could get to the docks and get to the boat and get it the hell out of there. So it's one of those cases where, yes, in the key situation, it's his boat, he's going to hang on to it, but that's also, if that's going to be the case, you want to consider that person the principal, and you want to make that your primary focus and making sure that the package gets to the destination point. And that's one of the key things that they really didn't do, because it was still kind of every person for themselves within the confines of the group as we move along. Now, in a real life situation, with air quotes there, again, having your individual supplies, whatever food, water, medicine, whatever you need on you. You carry your own stuff. Having whatever necessary common items. If you're using vehicles and you're making stops, leave the vehicle keys in the vehicle, because you don't know who's not going to make it back. Even when you leave a person with, stay with the vehicle. How many people have seen movies where somebody stays with the vehicle, and then when the rest of the group gets back, that person is not with the vehicle anymore, or they find the person but they don't have the vehicle? Something always goes wrong. So you want to be able to have it where you can hide the keys. Anyone can go out and do their search, and then whoever gets back at least knows where the keys are, so they're not waiting for people in case things go wrong. But again, Dawn of the Dead, still one of the best movies that I would say to look at in terms of, if anything and everything could possibly go wrong on a maximum level in terms of preparation for a realistic disaster crisis scenario, that would definitely be a good movie to reference, because when you watch it for the entertainment purposes, it's 100% entertaining. When you watch it and start to look at the small little things, and there's a lot of stuff in there that I didn't go through because there's so many small little things that you think about and going, oh, that's a good idea, or oh, that's a bad idea, and they didn't see why that's a bad idea, or I would have done this instead of that, or at the minimum, do this part first and then take care of that later. That's what you're going to start to unravel in the movie. But again, it's one of those things where, as far as from a prepping point, it's a good reference, it's a good base reference, because also everything moves so fast within that movie that in many cases, just like real life, some things happen so fast you don't have time to sit, take a breath, analyze it, talk to someone, form a committee, write a letter, voice your... You've got to move quickly, you've got to think quickly, you've got to act quickly, you've got to make that one decision, right or wrong, and even if it's the wrong decision, then you've got to make another snap decision right after it. Sometimes you don't have the time to discuss it in a roundtable format. You just need to be able to say, this is where we're at, this is where we need to go, let's start moving right now, and we're going to figure that along the way as we get there. And again, you be prepared to stay fluid. That's a key thing. Keeping your options open, staying fluid to the situation, because you don't know how it's going to change. And granted, sometimes things can go really wrong and you can't correct it. You just have to adjust and adapt as best you can and ride it out till you get to the end. Anyway, that's it for now. Check out these next suggested videos for you, and I'll catch you in the next one.